Hello, and welcome to the Ultimate Strategy Podcast, your go-to podcast for everything strategy. Each week, we'll be sharing a new episode covering a wide range of topics designed to help your business grow, not only smarter, but also make strategy more approachable and actionable. I'm Devina, Strategy Execution Director at Cascade.
And I'm Laura Blackmore, Head of Strategy Execution. Hello and welcome. We're so excited to have you with us today. We are talking about an exceptional brand, one that we are both very passionate about, and we're excited to walk through their successes, but also their failures. But this is just the beginning, so stay tuned for weekly episodes. Before we dive in, let me thank today's sponsor, Cascade. Cascade is the #1 strategy execution platform that helps turn visions into reality by working as the strategic brain of your organization. Thousands of businesses around the world use Cascade to plan, execute, and track their strategies all in one place, improving efficiency and speeding up decision-making. By successfully executing strategies in the platform, our customers are making a huge difference, from deploying life-saving vaccines to engineering the fastest Formula One car. And if you want to get your team moving towards your vision in one central platform, check us out on our website, cascade.app, and we'll leave the link in the episode notes. Now, let's get started. Devina, I'm so excited to talk about today's brand. We are talking about Etsy. I'm sure everybody around the world knows about Etsy. They are an e-commerce platform, a marketplace that's transformed handmade goods and small, one-person bands in their houses that are creating exceptional products, unique products into a big business. And whether you're, an artist, you're artisan, a vintage lover, or you're just someone looking for something unique, Etsy has carved out a niche unlike any other platform or any other website in the world. But how do they do it? What makes their strategy so distinct in a world dominated by giants like Amazon and eBay? What have they done to differentiate themselves from those two big brands? We're going to explore the story of Etsy from its humble beginnings to its status as a billion-dollar marketplace. Devina, why don't you tell us how they got started?
Absolutely. And I'm super excited about this episode too. So Etsy itself was founded in 2005. So actually it's their 20-year anniversary this year by a few different individuals, Rob, Kaylin, Haim, Shopik, and Chris McGuire. And it was actually founded in New York and Brooklyn at that. And the idea actually came from a simple observation from this trio. They found that artisans and creators didn't really have a dedicated creative online platform, right? They could post themselves on Amazon or eBay, as we mentioned, but that wasn't all around kind of these handmade artisan-specific goods. So as we said, most marketplaces at the time were focused on these mass-produced products. And it kind of left some of these crafters in a space where they were struggling to compete, right? And struggling to be found. So Etsy really set out to solve that problem by creating a safe space where craftsmanship and creativity could really shine and be the focus and almost the value proposition of the platform. So from the start, their mission was super, super clear. They wanted to keep commerce human, which I think is such a beautiful tagline for them. What we saw is that by 2007, so only 2 years later, Etsy had already achieved profitability. And that is a pretty impressive feat for a tech startup into Amazon, which was loss-making for a very long time. And today, Etsy actually has over 95 million active buyers and 8 million sellers worldwide. And, again, that was kind of a recent stat for 2024, but I'm sure that will grow incredibly over the coming years. So how did this scrappy startup carve out its own lane? So I think we can really break that down into key pillars of their strategy. Laura, and maybe you want to kind of cover what we've identified first.
Yeah, I think definitely for me, Etsy I feel like has been around forever, and it's definitely been around through most of my adulthood. But I think there's a real key differentiator that we've seen, and that's through their niche focus. So obviously, you've got Amazon, which really thrives on speed and convenience, whereas Etsy prioritizes that uniqueness, the craftsmanship. Sellers on Etsy create or curate their own products, everything from handmade jewelry to vintage finds. And actually, I wanted to share something I did actually buy recently. It was a gift for Christmas just gone. And it's interesting because I didn't really know what I wanted to buy, but I wanted to buy something vintagey, something unique. And I wanted to buy a pin cushion for a sewing room for my little boy. And I was on there and there was a few, they were really cute, little pin cushions, handmade, etc. But I actually came across this, and it's a vintage sort of silver shoe with the pin cushion attached in the middle with these little pins. And as the moment I saw it, and it was quite cheap, I want to say definitely less than £20, maybe about £15, quite cheap, but really effective. And I thought that's what I want. I want that. And it came 2 days later, I think, and it was beautifully wrapped in this little box, which I've kept because it's just gorgeous. And it had little tissue paper and little handwritten notes saying like, thank you so much for your purchase. It means so much to me. And I thought, I really want to buy something else. What else can I buy from this seller? But I think, it came and it just really surpassed my expectations, because that focus on individuality has allowed Etsy to appeal to a specific kind of buyer, which for myself is someone who doesn't like mass-produced things, who likes to shop locally. And of course, Etsy didn't do this accidentally. Their team understood that trying to compete with someone like Amazon is going to be a losing battle. And instead, they leaned into that model that fostered a sense of community. And I definitely feel that when I buy from these people, I know that they are people at home selling, making or purchasing unique items that we can then personalize. I think anytime I want a personalized item, I go to Etsy. Anytime I want something unique, that's where I go. And I've also received gifts myself. Like my mum bought me this beautiful like makeup bag, and she had my name engraved in it. And I just thought it was one of my favorite gifts I've had over the years, because it was so personable. So I think Etsy positioning themselves as that anti-Amazon, a place where buyers and sellers connect on a human level. And of course, it makes us want to go back as well. But they didn't stop there. And actually, this is one of my favorite aspects about Etsy. I have a lot of friends who are artists, jewelry makers, gift makers, and I know that they're all on Etsy. And what's really interesting is working in tech, I know that I could set up a shop, a storefront quite easily, but creatives often can't. They often haven't had that experience with technology. And I think what Etsy have done really, really well is cultivate that support for these sellers who don't have a lot of the tools or a lot of the knowledge and don't want to spend hours and weeks figuring out how to make a storefront. They've really given this easy to use, detailed guide on how to price, how to market, and really empowered small creators to thrive in this space and get their products to market super, super quickly. And I think this dual-sided value of supporting both the buyers and the sellers is truly the cornerstone of their success. I'd love for you to talk us through a bit more about the dynamics of the marketplace and what it means for both buyers and sellers.
Of course. And I love that pin cushion, Laura. I think it's so beautiful. And, you could have got a pin cushion from a department store, right?
Absolutely.
Our John Lewis, you could have done that and probably paid a very similar price, but it would have been a bog standard kind of pin cushion.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. So as Laura said, Etsy really do operate a two-sided marketplace. They want to keep buyers and sellers engaged. And balancing this dynamic is actually no easy feat, right? And it's not a small feat by any means either. So how does Etsy really do this? So for sellers, as Laura mentioned, it's super easy to get them set up. They offer low barriers to entry. So it doesn't seem like a scary thing to go up and set up an Etsy storefront. Whereas, for example, setting up a Shopify store might seem a little bit scarier. And sellers can actually list items for as little as 20 cents per product. They pay a transaction fee of a competitive rate of around 6.5%. And compared to other e-commerce platforms that we might see, it's a pretty affordable option for creators, especially when they're beginning. So beyond cost, Etsy actually also provides enhancing tools to support their e-commerce business. They help with things like SEO optimization, which also I think, Laura, can be quite scary for someone who might not be as technically savvy. They help with advertising and digital marketing programs, which I think is fantastic. And they have a fantastic set of analytics and dashboards in the background, pre-created for sellers. And this just enables them to really strengthen their online business, help do more of the thing that's working and do less of the thing that's not, which is win-win for each side. As an example, when you might add something to basket and you leave it in your basket overnight, actually sellers can see that. But what they can also see is what you've got in your basket. What are some of the themes that you've also been browsing across, and potentially send you a message, prompt you along with a promo code. And as Laura said, one thing that we see Etsy do often is that there'll be a comeback incentive. So buy from us again, and we can offer you a special code. So they're actually really great for really helping sellers maximize their sales, right? And also let them focus on what they do best, which is creating. And maybe, Laura, you want to cover the side of the buyers, right? People like me and you who are also avid purchasers on site.
Yeah, I think for me, the brands that really harness the customer experience is where I see the most success. And I think, Etsy really lean heavily into curation and discovery. They have really strong algorithms and great homepage that actually emphasize personalization. I actually have a background in personalization recommenders through AI, and it always surprises me how many big successful businesses don't lean into this. If you imagine the world of ASOS or, I'm trying to think of the other brands I haven't used in a little while, but like the Boohoo's of the world and the Pretty Little Things, when you look at an item, they recommend other items that you're going to love. And of course, there's always something there that you also want to add to your basket, and you often do. And I think this is such a great, easy win that you can make. And it's something that Etsy have really leaned into. And I think, particularly from the customer experience, like I mentioned earlier, I don't always go onto Etsy and know what I want to buy. And so they really need to make it easy for shoppers to find the products. Particularly, they have 8 million, sellers on there who are selling multiple products. That's a lot of products for you to be able to sift through. So you really have to use smart tools to give that personalization and tailoring to the taste, and also recommend other products once you've bought the pin cushion. What else would you be interested in? And that's exactly what happened. I didn't bring it over here, but when I put the pin cushion in my basket, it said, hey, the seller's also got these very nice vintage looking cotton reels. So I bought them as well. And they came from the seller. And so that really maximized the sale for the seller, but also my experience. I didn't know I was looking for that. And I love that it recommended it to me. But I think the other big thing that I absolutely love about Etsy is that prioritization of trust. So when I am purchasing these items, I can see previous ratings, I can see reviews. I think they also add pictures and video reviews now. So not only do you get the product description from the seller, but actually I can feel confident in my purchase because the previous buyers have also reviewed the product, and I can see, how the personalization looks, and, that might help me with my decision of how big to make the text or what color or what font to use. So I really love that because it focuses on creating that seamless, trustworthy experience for both sides. And of course, as a seller, you don't want these products being returned to you. Obviously, Amazon have a massive return rate. You don't want that as an independent creator, especially personalization, because you're going to be making a loss. So I think that for me is what keeps the marketplace thriving, I think, and certainly keeps me coming back for more.
I love that. And, Laura, with what you mentioned, I think it also creates this long-term relationship between you and the Etsy marketplace. You don't just see it as potentially a retailer that you would buy from once, in a once-in-a-lifetime purchase maybe, and then that's it. You'll never come back to it. It actually leaves you wanting to come back and be a long-term customer, which I think is something that brands get wrong. They just think about that short-term grab of a customer, whereas lifetime value is really, really important. So I love that. And maybe to pivot a little bit, I think branding is another area where Etsy absolutely shines. Their tagline of keeping commerce human, this trust aspect that you mentioned, really trying to be some anti-conglomerates, I think is embedded in everything they do. They really have a warmth and an essence about their perception. They focus on that creativity, the authenticity, and their marketing campaigns often showcase real life artisans and stories behind their work. You will never catch an Etsy banner or an Etsy ad really kind of being this not humanized experience, right? It's really so human-centered, which I think means that buyers really understand that every purchase supports an individual creator. And the storytelling approaches, creates this approach of also community. There's a real sense of community amongst buyers and sellers. I also know, even for me, I've had to involve customer service before, for example, when an order's been delayed, or, that there might be an issue, of course. And they've been fantastic about solving the issue as well. It doesn't even feel like a battle when something goes wrong. And I think that aspect is so, so important. And they've also really leaned into sustainability and making sure that they are an ethical brand. They want to support eco-conscious businesses and also ethical consumption, which I think is super interesting at a time where consumerism is at an all-time high. Something that we could get by with having only one of, we're now finding that we have multiple versions. And I think Etsy teaches us to really value the purchase that we're making and honor its roots. And something that they've done recently is also commit to offsetting their carbon emissions from shipping and logistics, which I think is interesting, because whilst e-commerce providers often do have an eco option, it comes at a cost to the consumer most of the time. And of course, consumer behavior means that we often want to choose the cheaper option. Whereas this offsetting mechanism, yeah, exactly, and fastest. And this offsetting mechanism really means that actually, that despite what, the shipping and the logistics or the air freight that might be happening, you're ultimately doing good for the earth as well. And these initiatives really deepen that loyalty piece that I was talking about. Laura and Devina want to come back. We are going to be lifetime customers. And I think that's super, super important. And something that I think works very well on Etsy too is recommendations and word of mouth. You will have purchased those pincushions, and Laura, you'll tell all your friends, and your son will tell all his friends, and that generates sales and buzz for also Etsy as a whole and that particular seller. So it's a great mechanism and really self-fulfilling too, which I particularly like. But saying all of this,
I was going to say, it's sounded all rosy and like they've had a phenomenal positive journey, but we know that it has actually not been without its challenges. And I think we talked a little bit at the beginning around the competition of eBay or Amazon Handmade, even Shopify. I remember having a few of my own businesses when I was younger, and Shopify was the place to go for me. And it was very easy to get websites off the ground and allow creators to set up their own stores. And I think one of Etsy's biggest struggles has actually been balancing that growth while maintaining that community ethos, which is obviously incredibly important. And I think as the platform has grown, particularly over the last few years, some sellers feel that Etsy is becoming quite commercialized. I think we all feel that as brands get bigger, moving away from that handmade roots. For example, the introduction of advertising, Etsy ads, and increased transaction fees have sparked a huge backlash. And obviously that's normal. It's where businesses often head. But I think for Etsy, they need to be really mindful that the ads are still staying true to those roots that they have. And the increase in the fees is because they are getting more, or sellers are getting more for their book. So I think that's something that Etsy needs to be really mindful of, is still staying true to why they started. And I think additionally, they have to continually innovate. We mentioned this a few times in previous episodes where businesses often stagnate. They actually need to be able to stay relevant. And while their niche focus has served them well, the rise of, DIY e-commerce tools like Shopify does pose that long-term threat for them, and they need to continue to differentiate. So sellers who actually grow too large for Etsy might actually migrate to their own website, and that could potentially harm or threaten Etsy's ethos or their model, because the sellers can go and cut out the middleman. So that there needs to be incentives to keep that seller there. Etsy needs to be able to continually innovate and offer more solutions, because it's not easy to migrate, but potentially sellers might feel like they are ready to go out on their own. And I think how Etsy navigate these challenges are going to be really critical for their future success and staying true to their roots, but also still offering that competitive advantage with the rise of technology. What do you think the future of Etsy is going to look like?
Good question. So I think from what we see at the moment, globalization and kind of expansion across the world is an important factor. They've obviously seen great success in the USA, and now they're starting to see a stronger presence in Europe. I know in particular, the UK is a strong growth market for them, but they also know that there's significant potential in some of the emerging markets, right? Particularly in Asia. And we've got other competitors there like Temu and Shein, Alibaba. So all kinds of different platforms and e-commerce models to compete with. So definitely something to think about. And then tech innovation that you mentioned, Laura. Etsy is actively investing in artificial intelligence and machine learning to improve those search and algorithmic recommendations, the personalized recommendations. By helping buyers discover that perfect item faster, they actually can increase customer satisfaction and retention. So even what you mentioned, right? You might go onto Etsy and not know exactly what you want to find. Maybe it's a gift for your son, a gift for your friend, a gift for your partner. But then it ultimately will help you to make that decision. And one thing I also expect Etsy to do is double down on the sustainability piece. Each of their kind of principles and strategy and what I see is alluding to the fact that they want to be a much more ethical and conscious business. And these initiatives could be that key differentiator from some of these bigger giants, shall we say, out there.
Yeah, I like that. And I think wrapping up or concluding this episode, I think Etsy's journey from that small startup to $1 billion marketplace is really testament to the power of their niche focus, the community building, and staying true to the mission. And I think that's a really important takeaway, is always staying true to your mission and your values. But as a creator-focused platform, they've empowered millions of small businesses, and that may not have been able to get the sales otherwise, or as many sales. You think about the little markets that these businesses have to do. Now they get that global presence. And I've also personally bought products that have shipped over from the US. So you get access to more businesses than ever before, whilst also offering a refreshing alternative to mass production, something incredibly personalized, that beautiful vintage pin cushion, or the personalized signs or bags or clothing that you can get. But as competition heats up, the question remains, can Etsy maintain its unique identity while continuing to scale? And I'd encourage any entrepreneurs and strategists listening to this episode. Etsy does offer 3 main valuable lessons. The first, find your niche and just own it. Work hard to really stay in that lane and be true to where you're playing. Build a community, not just a customer base. Make sure your customers are well heard and you're supporting both sides, the sellers and the buyers. But also balance that growth with authenticity. Think about the reasons why you originally created it. What is your vision or your mission that you're striving for? What are your values? And stay authentic to those. That is it for today's episode. I've absolutely loved talking about this brand. It's really inspired me to go and see what other little nice purchases I can make today.
Go shopping.
Yes. Not that I need much encouragement, but if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone who loves exploring business strategies as much as you do, and listen into future episodes. Thank you so much, Devina.
Great. So make sure to tune in to next week's episode. We'll be talking about another exciting topic. It's going to be a great episode filled with practical tips that you don't want to miss.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, all.
Great.
And thank you to Cascade.